Unlike Channel 4, Channel 5 or 5 could never emulate them by having a long living iconic logo important to their brand. The numeral 4 has been used by Channel 4 for 35 years to date, whereas the numeral in a circle only just surpassed 5, and this was replaced by a lowercase word, which never had the same impact. By October 2008, they were on to logo number 3, and logo number 2, including the word 5. Therefore, this was a channel with a proper identity crisis.
We are 5.
This rebrand did see the return of a circle, but rather than it acting as a border, it was in a solid colour, and it featured the word 5, which now was in uppercase. The question was, how long would this logo last? More importantly, what would the idents look like? The new on-air Ident-ity was launched on the 6th of October 2008 and was developed by design agency DixonBaxi, who were also responsible for the latest Premier League rebrand. The on-air Ident-ity was intended to reflect a constantly evolving, energetic and enthusiastic brand and tone of voice. Throughout this series, the common theme was Channel 5 predicting the future of a TV ident, but here we see Channel 5 taking a page out of its older textbooks, and there are examples of this when observing the first set of idents from this era. Some of the idents introduced included some plain animated idents with objects, effects and colours flying around in a dark brown, nearly black space.
Now on 5, a look at the day's big stories so far in 5 News with Helen Fospero.
Some of the plain idents from this era draw similarities to some of the idents from the 5 in a circle era. The plain one I have just shown reminds me of a March 2002 idents with the plain animated logo on a background. These idents were mainly shown before the news, in which they work well for and could be the 21st century equivalent to the BBC clocks. They also draw similarities to the 1991 BBC One Globe, with the effects around the logo echoing the smoke effects in the space surrounding the globe, and the swirly effects around the letter and the colours are very similar to the globe itself. The other idents included live action animation, and some drew similarities to idents on the channel before and the November 2006 ITV idents, but with more creativity. There were idents including people, which drew similarities to the 2002 set of 5 idents, but with more creativity. Some of them also remind me of the 1997 idents. Some of these include this one, with 2 people bumping into one another and twisting round one another, and one where someone sneezes out a bouquet of flowers. These idents are up there with the 1997 live action set of idents in terms of creativity, rather than the 2002 to 2004 range. Thus, the class of 2008 were more than just random clips with a dog popping up. In these idents, the logo is animated at the start and then disappears before the story it was told, which again was 5 being different to the other channels as the main logo did not feature closer to the end. This could be again proof that 5 were pointing to the future with the logo not showing at the end of the clip. However, it was still shown at some point, which does differ to what we may see today, but that is in another video. This may have inspired BBC Two a year later, as they did this with their dog in their refresh of their Window of the World idents. The other idents included objects, such as this one in the garden, where I assume that someone has let their laundry out to dry, only for some invisible heroes and villains to don them and duel. They continued their exchange in another ident set in a container. There was a series of idents featuring a musical giant who either played the accordion in a supermarket car park with shopping trolleys, drums with gas storage tanks, or the guitar with a motorway used as a neck. There were cartoon-style idents depicting the food chain with fish and objects and telling the story of someone's journey to a gig, which I believe would have worked well as a nighttime ident if Channel 5 had a nighttime strand like ITV and Channel 4 in the late 80s and 90s. Other idents included a pop-up storybook, someone's doodles, and a country town made out of jelly. It is a shame that I cannot remember much of these, as they show imagination. These idents lasted until July 2009, where the channel repeated history by bringing back celebrities and basing their idents around the channel's programming. In these idents, we get to see more of the generic logo, especially at the end. Here is one for the hotel inspector, with Alex Polizzi in set. The ident starts off like a normal 5 generic ident with the animation, but then Alex walks behind the logo and gives it a clean. Here is one for the mentalist, where the 5 logo is placed on a wall and then disappears and makes way for the character of the show, thus using similar techniques to the original animated idents. This is an ident promoting Flash Forward, with the 5 logo inside an eye, which is very similar to a Granada ident from the late 1990s, which practically did the same thing. This one I should remember well, as this was a show I tended to watch more often than any other show on this channel. This is a gadget show ident with a robotic 5 logo, which transformed into many gadgets. There were more variants of this, where the robotic logo tried to destroy a bee, and another one where it dances to some music. This ident ties in with the original set with the storytelling and imagination. There were idents for flagship sporting events, such as the Ashes and the newly rebranded UEFA Europa League, with a sketchbook and watercolours, one for the cricket, with a 5 logo styled as a cricket ball, drawn by cartoonist Gerald Scarfe, and emphasising that it is the Ashes test being shown by writing Ashes on 5, and a football ident with clips from football matches to give a taster of what is in store for the fans. As more new additions to the ident package were commissioned, the logo appeared bigger, with examples being this Law and Order ident set in a lab and this ident for CSI New York, where the 5 logo was formed by shiny windows. This ident is very similar to the BBC One Windows variant of their Circles idents. Many of these idents had a bit of BBC One to them with the use of the circle. There was this nice effort for Neighbours, where someone on Ramsey Street cut their hedge in the shape of the logo. Some later editions had the logo tilted, and this was even shown in the generic idents as well as the brake bumpers and in the promos. The flash forward ident was updated to accommodate this updated logo. Many of the programs which were given an ident in 2009 had a new one commissioned in 2010, including the Hotel Inspector with the 5 logo on the gate of a ghastly looking hotel, and the Gadget Show where the crew played with some pixels which formed up to make the logo. This was extended to sport with an updated Europa League ident, where a 5 logo styled football morphs into multiple footballs before someone takes a shot, which goes through a window where the 5 logo appears. And the same effect was used for the cricket ident, with a 5 logo styled cricket ball being shot through this same window. Other than BBC One, these idents also emulate that era's BBC Two, with a logo acting as a window of the world, especially with the football and cricket idents. The best example of this would be the cappuccino ident, with the 2 featuring as a window and the shape appearing on the froth, like the balls and the large logo on 5. Basically, imagine 5 marrying BBC One and BBC Two idents to make their own. You can see other examples of this with the Merton in Europe, the Right Stuff and the Ice Road Truckers idents. For me, the Ice Road Truckers ident resembles the Mirror ident on BBC Two. The Right Stuff ident actually marries BBC Two and ITV1 of 2002, not just because of the presence of a celebrity, but the studio setting. Here he is, dashing around the studio, standing by a 5 logo and then pulling a red screen to form the official logo. This is another example of recreating the 1999 to 2001 look, especially with a hole in the wall technique similar to those earlier Channel 5 idents featuring stars. This one could have also gave BBC One ideas 7 years later. I actually like these idents as they show creativity, and they are up there with BBC One and Channel 4. The sad thing is that I only watched the Gadget Show, and I wouldn't have even got to see much of that ident as I tended to watch it pre-recorded. And this, as was then, may be more the norm now, with this on-demand age. Maybe this could have been the same for any other viewers of this channel's programming, as Demand 5, 5's answer to iPlayer, was introduced in 2008. These idents represent everything noughties by mixing formation and live action, like BBC One were doing at the time. But I think with many of the idents having objects shaped as the logo, and thus showing their BBC Two side, this gives 5 an upper hand over BBC One, as the BBC One idents only had the dog animated and appearing. 5 did take on new techniques at the start of this era, with the animated logo appearing at the start of the clip before disappearing, but we also see more of what has been done before, either on this channel or others. Examples of this included the presence of celebrities, windows of a world, and the logos as different objects. Some of the idents are very similar to the then, present, and former idents on other stations, for example Granada and BBC Two. Maybe we are now at a point where creativity and ideas can only go so far. All of these idents were short-lived, as a new logo was introduced in 2011, and the channel again went back to the past for inspiration by bringing back the numeral, which, like that in 1997 and the word in 2008, was in a circle. How creative and innovative would the next lot of idents be? I am Tim Goodwin, over and out. Take care and peace.
We are 5.